Hello everyone, I Riya Pahuja from Economic Times welcome you all to the webinar Future-Proofing Manufacturing. COVID-19 presents a clear opportunity for manufacturers to accelerate their digital transformation journey and achieve the higher level of productivity they need in the short term to keep them ahead of the curve. The critical task, however, is to future-proof their digital transformation so that the technology and process they introduce now don't lock them out of the next round of advances. In this discussion today, etcio.com in association with HPE will help you devise the right digital transformation strategy for your organization. For this topical discussion, we have with us industry leaders. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Varun Agrawal, editor etcio.com, and Mr. Ranganath, CTO, Hybrid IT, HPE. A very warm welcome, dear speakers. How are you doing?
Hey Priya, doing well. Thank you.
Before we delve into the discussion, I would like to inform my attendees that they can drop in their queries and doubts in the box provided. We will be addressing all the questions in the end in our Q&A round. Varun, I am sure our attendees are waiting to hear from you. So let's begin with your thoughts. Over to you.
Thanks, Riya. So over the past decade, we've heard countless predictions that have been talking about how the manufacturing industry will look like in 2020. But thanks to COVID-19, none of it actually came true, except for a sharp focus on digital transformation. A recent E&Y study titled Will the Next Transformation in Manufacturing Be Led by Digital found that 83% of respondents understand digitization. However, only 3% had a clear-cut strategy, budgetary allocation, and implementation in progress. Concepts such as Industry 4.0 and Smart Factory, which interconnect the shop floor through emerging technologies, are now turning into reality. Digitization continues to transform manufacturing processes around the world, leveraging technologies such as industrial IoT, artificial intelligence, advanced robotics, etc. Now, a recent World Economic Forum report on readiness for the future of production 2018 found that India ranked 30th among 100 countries on readiness. Digitization will enable value chain optimization and transformation in the industrial process. Connectivity, interoperability, and connected assets are fundamental to this transformation in the manufacturing and process industry. Digitization has also, for the first time, given us the opportunity to lead the future of manufacturing. If industrial revolution of 18th and 19th centuries brought new levels of mechanical automation to industry, the digital revolution of the 20th and the early years of 21st century can be characterized by introduction and evolution of computing power and digital automation to industrial processes. Industrial sectors such as manufacturing, transportation, and energy are today deep in the Industry 4.0 era, where computers, robots, and networks of the initial digital wave work even smarter and more autonomously. With mountains of industrial machine and sensor data that is being created, there is an opportunity to use information technology to deliver ever faster and more actionable insights. The processing and application of that data to drive new business value within those sectors, often dubbed the industrial IoT, has much in common with enterprise IoT implementations in other areas such as retail and healthcare services. Commonalities include increased use of sensors and data collection, and the application of new IT technologies, including cloud computing, software as a service, and increasingly flexible wireless networks to transport, process, and analyze all that data. But industrial firms face unique IoT challenges as well. Today's industrial environments include vertical specific and often decades old programmable logic controls, or PLCs as we know them, supervisory control and data acquisition systems, or you can call them SCADA, and other computerized platforms that sit outside the realm of enterprise IT. These OT systems, which enable demanding command and control processes, often in remote or harsh operating environments, are deeply embedded and characterized by long depreciation cycles, and thus unlikely to be ripped out and replaced anytime soon. They are often completely air-gapped or otherwise shielded from the internet or other enterprise networks. The fear has been that exposing them to the outside world and through attacks or performance disruption could affect vital business operations. And finally, such systems are typically implemented by and the responsibility of a set of technologists with distinctly different and necessary mechanical and engineering mindsets that typical IT professionals. There are varied automation landscapes in the industry, from partly automated to island of automation. Digital technologies of the modern times enable this transformation from partly automated systems to highly autonomous systems, thereby enabling high level of visibility and insights in the manufacturing value chain. Industrial IoT brings these two worlds together: information technology, operational technology, and linking high-speed IT disruption and deployment principles with more conservative and rightfully rigorous manufacturing processes. It's an intersection that heralds tremendous new business value and competitive advantage for those who can master it. And it also presents to both sides significant challenges on many fronts, including technology, culture, and management approach. And while many assume that industrial IoT is only for the large manufacturing units, the truth is that digitization could be their only way to future-proof their business and remain competitive in the market. Ultimately, it's not about whether you should look at digitization through technologies such as IoT or industrial IoT, but about when. Thank you. So with that, I would now like to hand over the presentation to Ranganathan. Welcome, Ranga. Over to you now.
Hey, thanks, Varun. Let me just set it up to see my screen. And Priya, can you confirm it's on?
Yes, it's on. We can see that screen.
Okay. Firstly, namaste and a very good afternoon. Thanks for joining us for today's session. The focus of today's session is a very interesting one. And I typically like to speak on manufacturing related activities because of the fact that you're able to see things that happen, right? We are predominantly from an IT world. The development that we do on software, etc., is something that we physically can't touch or see. So in that context, doing things that are very relevant to the manufacturing world is of utmost importance for us. And my name is Ranganath Sadashiva. I am the Chief Technology Officer at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And I typically keep pegging at the emerging technologies that are there and its relevance to humans, mankind, and what we can do there. So it is in this great journey that I try and connect the dots that's happening from a technology perspective and bring it in focus to you. And obviously, once you understand the nuances of how technology can really help, we scale from there in terms of implementing that in your respective organizations. With that said, I know that this is some tough times and we have all gone through a lot of things. And in that context, I just want to tell you about what HP's perspective has been. Since the onset of the pandemic, I think, the entire gambit of families, organizations, businesses, etc., have all gone through a serious amount of change. So in that, HP's viewpoint was to help. We were there to help, and we did this across 4 pillars. And I just want to kind of give you a brief around it because it is important to understand that we as technology service providers have a role to play, and it is our ownership that we go and help our customers, and that's what was item number 1 here. Keep it going, where we essentially ensured that the entire gambit, the spectrum of customers that we had across various segments in the country, who were all kind of held together with our services and the support capability that we have. We ensured that each one of them kind of ran to the extent that they could, and we were behind them in ensuring that that really happened. There were engineers who took passes, traveled during the lockdown times. So that was the kind of stupendous work that happened. And the second point is moving forward. When people actually kind of absorbed the shock of the pandemic, it was about how do you move forward. That's where we came out with financial ability and financial packages that gave so much of flexibility that people could adopt to technology. And I'm a firm believer that technology helps in the course of human mankind. So in that case, here we were going to our customers and giving them a lot of options from a financing perspective to procure technology. It could be that they gave away their old hardware, and we just valued it and gave them back new hardware. We said, you just pay 1% of whatever you're buying now, and you could pay that later on. The various options that one could weigh on, from a technology sponsorship through a $2 billion kind of fund, is what we did. And a tremendous uptake from a lot of our customers there. I think it has helped them to kind of move forward in the course of things. um, while we did that, we also saw that there were several challenges that came up immediately after the pandemic, right? You all know how businesses had to transform themselves to meet the challenges of the pandemic. And that's where some of the challenges that were there became kind of things that were common thread for most of the customers. So we looked at delivering connectivity to a lot of organizations, right? Connectivity organizations, especially in the manufacturing field, who were predominantly stationed in a given location or in a few locations, had to have this capability of trying to work from home, perhaps, or run their applications. Virtual desktop infrastructure became one of the key solutions that we provided. Security became an important aspect, because you were getting a lot of people to connect onto your home networks, which was predominantly happening out of the office. Likewise, there were several solutions that we did, and business continuity and process, again, a very important aspect to keep the production running, and that's where our support capability also came into play. So we did that. And last but not the least was accelerate research in the context of this being a pandemic, and this being a pandemic without having a cure or a vaccine. There was absolute need for us to accelerate this. And there was a high performance computing forum that was formulated by the White House in the US. HP was a contributor there in terms of giving the assets that are needed for high performance computing. These are traditionally very, very high value items, and that for anybody to procure straight away, we said we will put in our assets together and do that. And we did that in India as well. We ran some e-health centers, mobile health centers across the country, which had the capability of connectivity and doing some COVID testing. And also in terms of the IGIP, as we call it, it is essentially the genomics and integrated biology in Pune, where we gave them some high performance computing as well, so that they were able to kind of put their resources behind in finding the cure for this particular pandemic. But having said all of this, it is happy that we were able to serve our customers, be part of their recovery process, their acceleration process, and anything like that. So it is in that context that I humbly begin my session talking to you about the immense possibilities around the world of manufacturing, right? So this is how we approach this. So let's start with the fact that the world is dynamically changing. And I think the amount of change that we have seen is something that you would have heard. But the fact that it is impacting us on a day-to-day basis is something that I want to talk to you about. Everything computes today, right? From the handheld device that you have, or the processor or a laptop that you use, or everything is doing some kind of calculations today. It is because of the amount of devices that we have. That there's a growing number of devices that you will see furthermore as well, and all of them are interconnected in this world. You're talking of that communication becoming much stronger. We're talking of technologies in the communication field like 5G, etc., which is going to enhance this. So that's the kind of paradigm shift that we see. And each one of our businesses are also becoming 365 days 24/7. There is no time for us to essentially look at anything other than that. But and so you have to kind of cope up with those kind of needs. How do you do that, right? And even if you look at the typical transport that you do between home to office or anything like that, it is also through a connected apps today. You have a lot of these hail taxis that are there, which enable you for those connections to happen. There's some amount of compute there as well. And lastly, if you look at the kind of devices that you see just in the context of payments today, you see so many of these devices where you can make these payments. And you would have recently read about the fact that the amount of payments in the country, as in India, the adoption rates are very, very, very high. So you see that there is a Paytm or anything like that available with the vendors next door as well. It is this kind of a paradigm that is, and this leads to something that's very important for organizations to do. And the world calls it digital transformation. I think Varun also spoke about the fact that there's a fillip to digital transformation today, and it is definitely given a fillip post COVID, I can say, because I'm seeing the kind of market and the market reactions towards developing the digital transformation roadmap for themselves or the strategy for themselves. And this is very true from a manufacturing perspective. Very simply put, digital transformation is the digitization of your products, services, and solutions, right? You're giving it a digital footprint so that you're able to kind of maximize the value that you create. You maximize the data analysis that you do, and the products are much more enabled for you to do new innovations, new products, and stuff like that. In the manufacturing world, this comes about pretty strongly, right? If you're looking at the first aspect of digital design and simulation, today we are talking of CAE based activities happening. We're talking of continuous development being part of design processes. This is happening at a pace where you need to kind of have this kind of infrastructure or a digital transformatory processes incorporated into digital simulation there. Let's talk about supply chain. Supply chain again is a complex network in which you're sourcing a lot of your equipment to be part of a larger process that you would do in your factories. And any kind of upsetting rhythm in that area causes for a lot of problems. It causes for delays, and especially during the COVID times, I think you have a very fresh memory in terms of how you not only had to source them, but also ensure that you're sourcing it from across the world as well, right? So that becomes one of the key areas where digital transformation helps. We talk of digital factories today, where we are talking of a lot of connections coming through, a lot of robotics coming into play, a lot of AR, VR based activities that are happening. So those are the factories of the future today, because if you look at each one of this, it's a key item in the roadmap of developing a digital footprint in this area. And if you look at the product itself, they are transforming as services today. You may not have a physical product to sell, but you might have a service to sell. That is where you saw transportation as a service really pick up. We are essentially talking of providing power as a service, which was already there, but for some captive power that's coming through as one of the things that people are coming out with, especially in the wake of government pushing for battery based cars and things like that, right? So this digital transformation is going to be there, and if you've not endorsed this, I think it is time that we go and do that. In the context of smaller organizations, you see this adoption here, the trends being categorized in terms of how are the trends currently being played in the marketplace. Essentially, here is to create a digital model, re-engineer your processes, manage your operations, and do that. If you see that almost a significant percent of them are in the middle path. They have tried something, they have really not accelerated that kind of journeys as they move on. And some of them are yet to start, 18% of them. That's a significant part in the SMB world. But it is important that we realize that this is the most important thing to do in the next few days, so that you're able to put in your might, your efforts towards digital transformation is what we should be looking at. And in the context of a framework for this, it is the experience across the business process that is there, whether it is in terms of the design or the prototyping of the design. So this workflow is representative in terms of how you could look at what are the aspects in a given manufacturing domain, starting with the conceptualization of the product, new product development. We are talking of research and development. Then talking about production there, how do you look at digitizing the entire production stack there, whether it is operations of the plant, or whether it is the supply chain management. You pick any one of that in the production area. Next, in the quality assurance area, how are you able to use digital technologies to ensure that you come out with better quality of products? You're bringing down the failures of your products, you're increasing your quality assurance quotient. These are the things that come up. And last but not the least is a digital experience, right? When you're talking of taking this product in the marketplace, I think it is the experience that matter. I'm sure you would have heard about the fact, people now are turning businesses towards an experience that they can provide, right? So it is in that context that we see this going. So this entire stack of digital experience is important for everyone to absorb. It is important for everyone to invest in this area. So that's what we see as the next steps in the digital experience process. Having said that, hang on. Just trying to minimize this. Anyhow, uh, having said that, the manufacturing fraternity has gone through a lot of pains, and some of those are actually captured here. This is something that came out from PwC a few days back, and I've just put them in 4 blocks here. One is about increasing customer expectation, right? And customers are now becoming very, very finicky. Their likes and dislikes are getting too much. They're making choices. There is not one thing that fits everybody. So that is the thing that is coming into product and manufacturing designs as well, right? If you just take the automobile industry, easy to kind of describe that there people are talking of the want of customized colors, customized interiors, and those kind of things. That upwards, you're seeing that there is a sense of personalization that's happening in the customer expectations. Now, how do I handle that? You need answers for that. Intense competition, you never know where competition is going to hit you today. We speak about this fact called idea economy, right? You have an idea, you can create an economy behind it. Like many of the startup companies today who are there, have an idea and they are able to create an economy around it, right? If you take again the automobile industry, we're talking of a company like Tesla, which has a different kind of an idea, right? They're talking of a customer experience even when you're driving. So that drives a different kind of a competitive pressure for you, for the organizations today, and you'll have to go through that. Supply chain production and complexity, you're not essentially manufacturing for one market today. You're manufacturing for the world, because world is shrunk today. It is, you can essentially have a market that is as big as the world. So it is in that context you'll start manufacturing today. Imagine the fact that I'm based out of Bengaluru, and there are a lot of roses, and almost 80-85% of the global market of roses go out of Bangalore. So imagine a farmer who's just growing, or in the context of supply chain here, just growing a rose, but its ability to reach the world, right? That's the kind of complexity that we are seeing today, and you'll have to figure out how you will respond to that. The other thing is about the kind of compliance norms that are coming into play today. You're seeing things in the automobile industry. We saw the need for new regulatory regulations, which ended Bharat 5, I think, in March, and again coming up with a new endorsement there. That calls for a change in the way you look at your products. How do you do that? Or it could be in terms of sourcing of your material. Say, suppose if you're sourcing this from XYZ, you will have to look at a world where you're meeting to your customers' demand and sourcing them from a different part. Calls for a change in the entire mechanism. Or it could be looking at the carbon footprint that on a given product. So all of this are putting a lot of pressure. Apart from the fact that financially there are pressure, there's issues around labor, there is issues about components, etc., etc. So the question is, does technology help here, right? And what if I could find insights from a customer, and I'm able to really go and develop a product that's based on the customer insights, right? Then you're able to meet the customer demands then. What if I am able to incorporate that in a design, and I'm able to kind of do that very, very quickly, so that I'm staying ahead of the competition, I'm understanding the market. As Peter Thiel says in his startup book, your next competitor will not have the same idea. The next innovation will not be Uber. It will be something different, which you cannot conceptualize. So, can you get those kind of products in and design that? Complexities of supply chain, right? How do you manage that? Can you close loop from product ideas, and ensure that you're not working in silos, you're putting all of them together. right? So these are the things, from a perspective of the compliance part of it. Are you able to kind of redesign your product to meet the needs of compliance? That's something that you need to be looking at, and how do you do that? So this is the challenges, and this is the ask from the industry. If I were to generalize this, this is coming out of a lot of surveys that have been done across the globe, and figuring out what manufacturing organizations would need. And the answer is yes, you can. The future of manufacturing is connected, automated, and data driven. Connected, I spoke about the fact that they are going to be, according to Gartner, now we are saying there are about 20 billion connected devices that we currently have in 2020, and in the next 5 years it's going to go up to 40 billion connected devices, which means that they have a voice, they have an identity, and they're trying to connect to somebody. So you'll have to start speaking to them. It will be automated based on the insights that we get. You'll be in a position to take corrective actions very, very quickly. Today we are seeing this in a lot of devices today. We are seeing in a lot of these the factories that we are seeing, in terms of how they use this automated insights. And it's going to be data driven. I think manufacturing entities have typically been data driven, but in this case, you're going to extract information out of data and convert insights from data. So data will be the prime mover, but you go ahead and convert that into something bigger. What are the things that are going to help you do this? Predominantly from an IT perspective, we talk of IT and OT in manufacturing organizations. In IT, the technologies that I've listed here in these purple boxes are all called as innovation accelerators, right? If you have to do things quickly in your organization, if you have to future proof, use these technologies, is what what's the clear saying this, whether it is automation and robotics, whether it is mobility and cloud, whether it is IoT, which is very, very predominant in the manufacturing organization, machine learning, augmented reality, supercomputing in certain cases. These are the kind of technologies that are here today to help you create the factory of tomorrow, right? Whether it is to develop a digital twin, enabling the digital processes across the world. Some examples could be self-learning production, where corrections are happening on an autonomous basis, preventive maintenance that happens. Several of these things that will enhance the way we deliver, this kind of an IT OT integration to end customers, right? So what does that really mean from a business standpoint? I think faster time to market, improvement in cycle times for development. Today we are seeing products come in very, very quickly. The life cycle of products has shrunk. You're essentially coming out with more products on an annual basis. That's the kind of need, because you need to be refreshing technology, and also technology is progressing at such quick pace. Improve productions, improve businesses, increase your services portfolio. These are the things that can all be enabled with technology today, right? That's where I speak about the fact that future proofing of manufacturing is indeed incorporation of some of these technologies, and how you look at it. From an HP perspective, accelerating time to value is the number one priority that we look at. We want to provide the digital foundation for organizations on which they will look at their applications, they will use their data, they will use the insights that are there, they will use the intelligent edge or IoT devices that are there, and ensure they are actually digitally transforming. So in that context, we can look at IT being one of the largest enabler today. A lot of these things that you come in that are relevant technologies today, I could speak of. Whether it is building a secure and resilient infrastructure for IT, whether it is using agile DevOps methodologies for developing applications for digital transformation, or looking at the workloads that are growing, and optimizing those workloads. All of that can be done. Or in fact, latest on the technology bandwidth is containerization, whether your apps could be containerized, so that you're able to take those apps that are in your in your organizations and can be transported to any other platform, and you're able to kind of leverage the digital platform that you create for yourself. And intelligent edge, almost 60% of the data is going to remain on the edge. And as I said, with about 40 billion devices in the next 5 to 6 years, we are going to see a lot of these devices really creating a lot of intelligence, which has to be harnessed. So it creates intelligence. How do you harness that? You need networking capability, you need the capability of storing that data, you need the capability of understanding data, you need the capability of creating insights there, perhaps, before everything actually goes to the core or gets dislodged. That's the kind of activity that Edge will have. And in the context of a digital transformation in manufacturing, connecting these edge devices becomes very, very important whenever you're talking of digital transformation. So that's where HP fits in the context of manufacturing and manufacturing solutions. I also want to kind of give you a little bit more in terms of how each one of these areas can be addressed with a couple of examples for sure. I'm sure this is my effort in capturing the business value framework for manufacturing. It is a very busy site, but I understand that. But in the context of putting all of that happens in a manufacturing plant into one single slide and kind of giving them some kind of direction is what I've tried to do. You see the various kind of KPIs that are run by executives or by financial organizations. So manufacturing strategies, right? Manage complex dynamic value chains could be a strategy. Integrate IT, OT, and CT could be one of the strategies. And typical initiatives that augur well with these kind of goals is what I have highlighted in red, right? We all talk about Industry 4.0, and there was a mention by Varun on that when he started off. Is all about how do you get into the next gear from a manufacturing perspective, right? How do you ensure that you create a network of connected devices, get some insights out of it, and deliver what is absolutely needed for in the next level of manufacturing processes. You could look at the third aspect here, digitalization of design and production, right? How do you make that digital transformation in these areas of design and production? I spoke about the fact for need of products on a much regular basis now. How do you do that, and how can you ensure that there is a sense of urgency, a sense of meeting the demand that comes into play? Internet of Things for the consumer. I think this has got the attention and imagination of a lot of manufacturing organization. While it is kind of rudimentary for several of them, but a lot of people are also kind of leveraging this as a technology, right? And this is the ability to speak to the edge. This is the ability that will help you to proactively maintain your devices. This is your ability to go ahead and do a proactive maintenance, understand maintenance banks, keep up uptime, and those are the things that come into play here as a lot of this framework. So having said that, the role that HP plays also is important, and I'll take this opportunity to kind of give you a quick glimpse of the possibilities when you're speaking to HP from a manufacturing perspective. Let's look at SAP. Perhaps I just chose SAP as an example, but you're looking at a lot of these kind of softwares that essentially cover a lot of the IT part of what manufacturing organizations do. Obviously there is much more to this, whether you are looking at PLM as an activity or QA as an activity, right? I just chose this as an example where, because it's, I think, a comprehensive suite of solutions that enable a lot of manufacturing organization, especially in a geography like India. So and the capability of the software has also gone up a little bit, whether it is towards digital transformation or whether it is understanding your customers from a CRM perspective, or looking at analytics, real-time analytics and stuff like that. So this comprehensive portfolio that you have, or a software stack that you have, is your intelligent application that you run, right? And for this to run intelligently, you need to have an intelligent infrastructure that supports the needs of SAP like applications. These are applications that are lifeline to any kind of an organization. There's no downtime that one can expect. These need to run 24/7. They need to be safe, secure. You name it, from any organization, as this being the number one or the most critical kind of an application. Where HP steps in there is a portfolio of products that help this particular application run on-prem, on cloud, or in hosted environment. products, right? There is a lot of products here that go into. I start with the test and develop, typically where people start their journeys around ERPs, around SAP. And when you're hosting them onto very large footprint, you would essentially be looking at mission critical systems. These are large systems having multi CPU capability built on RAS functionalities, which is essentially giving you the high availability that is needed to run an application like this. And the data that's important, because each one of this is creating a lot of structured data, and that has to be stored for reasons of understanding what your business is. How do you leverage that data moving on? But that could be held on storage devices like Nimble and Primera. And you also have another variant which is intelligent to the extent that it is completely composable, right? So you have a fluid resource pool here, whether it is compute or storage. You could essentially configure them as and when you need, and however size or shape that you will need. That's the composability paradigm. And each of this is the intelligence that drives that application stack to ensure that your manufacturing organization is leveraging the capability of ERP like products, right? The other example I have is around the edge, right? And as I said, there is this kind of growth that you see on the edge, which is phenomenal. I myself have seen the amount of devices that everyone carries, and imagine a shop floor for that, where you have a lot of machines and a lot of places where you need to have devices to monitor that. So, and this can happen in products that you create as well. Today we have so many of our household devices which have these sensors, right? So whether it is a fan, whether it is the refrigerator that I have at home, all of them have sensors, and they are all getting actuated, which means that I'm able to sense what is the kind of data that is there, right? When you're doing that, you want to control that, you want to understand that, and that's where IT has to shift from core to the edge. And that's a difficult aspect, because most of the time, all these decades you've seen IT to be a centralized piece of equipment, and overnight you're asking them to move to the edge because the number of edge devices are going to go up, right? So that's a real challenge. When you bring it to the edge, you will have to kind of look at the data and understand that, which is essentially doing some kind of compute on it. And once you understand what it is, you also have to take some insight, so you'll have to do some analytics there as well. So that's how you see the integration of OT and IT coming together, right? Because all those devices were part of a network which was called OT, and today it was typically a neglected part of the entire transformatory journey of organizations. But today, when you're talking of digital transformation, it's absolutely important to integrate OT and IT together, right? Then you're able to kind of get the insights from them, and IT is now pretty much forced to develop strategies around doing that. And ultimately, you can take that to the core and do a lot of activities in terms of understanding the analytics behind it, right? So the key needs from an edge perspective is your capability to get your data, analyze your data, and see if you can get a quick insight there. And also, because these devices are going to places where it's not a data warehouse or something like that, so you will see these typically not in a data center, but you'll be seeing it in a warehouse, in a factory. Sure, it has to be rugged, it has to be simple as well. That's where the edge becomes very important. Most of the initiatives that we see in future proofing of manufacturing today is centered around the edge. Let's look at what this does. In the context of this IoT devices, it essentially helps you in bridging the challenges that I spoke to you about, right? The lot of pressure points that I kind of repeating here again in terms of the customer expectations, the competition paradigm, or in the supply chain paradigm. Industrial IoT, I think, is one of the nice blossoms that IT as a technology has brought to the foray, because you are able to kind of leverage a lot of activities. How do you do that? So this is to just give you a perspective that the IoT revolution is actually going beyond manufacturing to every other industry as well. Whether it is automotives, the amount of data that a car generates, I think, is about 25 terabytes per day. and that's the kind of data that edge devices are providing today. I was very recently speaking to another organization, an automotive organization, where they had a lot of sensors in their product, and that is sending out so much of information. And they were looking at how do you harness that, how do you get more data out of it, and lead up to different kind of possibilities there. So from an HPE stack, the convergence of OT and IT happens. There is platforms that we deal with. It is called the Edgeline Converged Edge Systems. They are ruggedized. They are essentially easy to use. They can be put in shop floors. And the capability is dependent on what is the kind of data that you're going to collate at the edges and what you want to do with it, right? There are these devices which can help you essentially collate all of the data from not only one IoT stream, because IoT is use case dependent, right? And today we are seeing the emergence of several use cases in this area. So how do you do that? That's where the Edgeline products come into play and enables the transformation that organizations and manufacturers are trying to do with their edge and connected devices. Let's look at the next possibility, which is the elevation of the same IoT platforms into something bigger. I said the collection of data that is there is a single use case, but you could also have multiple use cases. And today organizations are reaping that benefit. They're able to optimize the manufacturing streams that they're doing. They're able to drive data from each of these edge devices to take some kind of action, improve life cycle management of the product development, faster time to market, as I said, and expanding the services portfolio. So HP has unique IP here in their ability to look at a plethora of options around the IoT field, but able to kind of put them all together under the framework of in HP's industrial IoT framework. Right? It's just not one use case, but hundreds of use cases which can all be collaborated, put together, and you're able to kind of harness this diverse data and come out with meaningful insights, right? So that's where we see the aggregation of IoT today happening in more mature customers. But nevertheless, it is a journey that is taking shape in every given organization, as I noticed. Quickly, the last use case is I will default if I'm not talking about artificial intelligence today, because this is now the new standard, right? But we should all understand that this emerges out of intelligence, right? Artificial intelligence is not something that's beyond the intelligence paradigm. So it is the ability to kind of offshoot typical activities that we do with by collecting a lot of data and building some logic on that. And we see that in the manufacturing paradigm, it is gaining a lot of traction. And we are seeing AI projects being very relevant in the country as well. If you look at what is happening in the country in terms of AI strategy being done by Niti Aayog, or the impetus that you see for students to learn more about AI, or if you look at the number of startup organizations that have come up in the AI domain, all of that is a standing testimony that AI is a technology that we need to leverage, right? And how do you leverage is very, very unique, because depending on the use case that we see. But in a manufacturing domain, we are seeing 3 or 4 use cases. This is perhaps the top 4 across the board, but you see 3 of them in the manufacturing domain. Quality control for maintenance using image or video analytics. A lot of this activity happens, in fact, in our own HP's plant. We do that in terms of understanding the amount of servers that we manufacture, to understanding the nuances there, and do some maintenance on the devices there and even on the product. Video analytics and surveillance, again, very useful when you're looking at shop floors today, to capture the facial recognition is alongside facial recognition, the kind of work that you're doing, whether it is as prescribed or if there is any kind of deviation there. You can do all of this video analytics if somebody is crossing the yellow line and going into an area where they should not. Those kind of things are all being done by the video analytics and the surveillance things. I think the biggest thing is around autonomous driving as well, where we are talking of the ability to drive the car using prefetched knowledge, right? People are doing a lot of dry runs here to understand how cars have to move and drive safely. So this is work in progress. HP is part of very very large projects here in terms of providing the capability of autonomous cars. The characteristics of an autonomous car, which is the ability to sense, understand, and act. Right? This is the AI part in which in the manufacturing domain gaining a lot of prominence. Again, from what HP can do, right from the fact that we are able to understand the data and analyze that data through AI/ML workloads. We have a platform for AI/ML which helps you to kind of take the data points wherever it resides, on the edge, on the core, or it could be any other data point. We're able to collate all of them and gain insights which are relevant for you. Uh, as I said, edge to cloud, that is the strategy that we have irrespective of the product, and optimized for workloads. AI/ML are very dependent on high access compute and quick performance. So you have that being done. And the biggest thing is that we have an open partner ecosystem. We essentially are doing this based on the customer requirements, and that's how we are doing that. So if you're looking at AI/ML and the footprint around it, we package this in a way that what is your requirement, what is the typical thing that one needs to be done, and we do that along with services as well. Moving ahead, the partnerships and alliances here. We are essentially talking of a lot of partnerships that we have been able to develop, right? As I said, it is a connected world, and there are a lot of applications which are enabling a digital transformation. So we have to have the ability to work with all of them. And if you look at this is across two very specific areas, but I just wanted to showcase the amount of partners and alliances that we work with. And when we say what we are working with that, we have a blueprint to deliver the right solution to your doorstep. We have the services capability to come and advise you on what perhaps is the right choice to make. But that's the kind of things that we do with our alliances and partners. So have we done a lot of this? Yes, we have done a truckload of them. Just a couple of examples here. Penske is essentially into car racing, and the design parameters have to be done pretty much on the fly. From race to race, they run about 400 races in a given year, and we have helped them, with the help of IoT and PLM solutions there. We have been able to ensure that we're accelerating the engineering and design there, optimizing supply chain. Again, a lot of examples. Penske also kicks in here, but Kaiser is a compressor production house based out of Germany, and the kind of work that we do with them in terms of maintenance of that device, optimizing that there is no downtime, etc., is what we have been able to do. And with ABB, it is more a proactive engagement there in terms of reducing the footprint that is required for data centers today. They are into when they're looking at creating these data centers for many of their customers. We are providing solutions around IoT and sensors, and helping them basically transform the way they go and deliver their services. So that's a joint venture program that we have done. With that said, I want to quickly summarize the ability and capability that HP has. Aggregate and create environments for data insights, whether it is through edge devices or core devices, networking devices, switches, beacons that are there on the shop floor. Somebody's wearing that on their helmet, somebody's just as a clip on. We're able to get those data insights and do that. In fact, those beacons were used in COVID distancing in some of the manufacturing organizations of late as well. Secure edge, as I said, because of the nature of these devices being widespread and scattered, how do we secure them? We have policies that run on the networking devices that do that. Data for data pipeline, to big data, whether it is for SAP HANA, or is it for CIE, whether it is for AI or ML, all the kind of data pipeline creation, we have the technology and we focus on that. We spoke about machine learning, again, which is related to AI/ML there. a lot of infrastructure products that enable this machine learning or deep learning, because you're essentially looking at a lot of data that needs to be churned, and given that intelligence has to be passed on, you need an infra for that. And last but not the least is our ability to partner and deliver to the business requirements that you have. That's what this is the promise that HP brings to the table there. Future-proofing manufacturing. Very glad to kind of bring to you at least a couple of proof points in terms of what this can HP can do and deliver. So with that, I just want to close my talk. Thanks once again for listening in. We can take some questions if there's anything that's there on the screen.
Sorry, I had put myself on mute. Hello again, sir. We are beginning with the Q&A round. I request attendees to drop in their queries. We will be addressing them now. So, sir, for the very first question we have here is on a larger note. How do you think the adoption of IoT has been in the Indian market, and how do you see the adoption growing considering the ongoing challenges that we have because of COVID?
Very interesting. The fact is that people recognize IoT to be one of the key technologies, but the point is the implementation of the technology is taking a little more time than I typically would have wanted it to happen. Having said that, it is that curiosity and interest that triggers in some kind of implementation of this project. The other complex thing about IoT and its implementation is that each one has its own character. Everything is very, very unique, and every customer has a uniqueness around it. And in that context, I'm seeing a lot of adoption, POCs happening, but the real impact of IoT will happen when it reaches a scale. When you're saying that you're able to bring together a lot of IoT data together, and then analyzing that, that's when you can take some critical decisions. But keep trying. This is a technology that will help you to delve into perhaps the largest chunk of data that resides in your organization.
Sure. So the next question here is, do you see the SMB organizations adopting to the new technologies in India? How has been the HPE's experience here?
Oh, SMB, while in the initial part during this phase, we saw some bit of, the people were held back, I would say, and the reasons are quite obvious. People wanted to hold to their cash, and they did not want to invest. It is in that context that when HP came out with this $2 billion, financing option, we went to our customers and said, look, this is a time where you have to invest, and everyone knows that it is during these times of crisis, you can actually change the way you address the markets. You invest more to increase your digital footprint. And ironically, or should I say, ironically is the wrong word, I should say interestingly, in the last 3 months, that is post-May, we have seen a lot of SMB organizations in the manufacturing space really, buying a lot of equipment and gear from us. We were just doing some kind of a business review, and this came out, and I just picked up that data point, and I'm glad to share that. And most of them are trying to basically build on ensuring, after the initial phase where they took care of whatever was required, I think now they're trying to build into the future. So that is where I think SMBs will be crucial, and they will still kind of invest more.
Sure. Also, another question here on Industry 4.0. We say that Industry 4.0 is progressing with the development of new business models and emerging technologies. So if you could just brief it out, how has there been the HP's contribution to this ongoing development?
Quite a bit. I think, right from the way HP currently has operated over decades, I think, while manufacturing has been the biggest focus for HP, right from the days of smaller levels of IT automation in manufacturing organizations to working very, very closely with the likes of SAP and others. So, when this entire landscape is transforming, HP has been part of it. A lot of innovation that's come into play. If you look at the way ABB is now bringing their products and how we have integrated with them on the scale of trying to get the connected devices working alongside a solution. We have transformed in a way that we are able to now work for an outcome, right? Instead of just saying that here is the hardware, you run your application on it. I think the transition has been, let's look at what do you want to do and how can HPE help. That's where the technology and our expertise is coming together to ensure that your time to market is shortened. And I kind of elucidated that in one of the slides, but that's where HPE stands in this journey.
Sure. Sir, I as a journalist have interviewed a lot of CIOs and IT leaders out there, and they've been saying how they are creating new end-to-end digital journeys for their organizations. I'm sure you have been in contact and in conversation with IT leaders out there. Do you think this new transformation will stay after we are done with the pandemic, after we have the new normal, or will the companies start rolling back to the way they were pre-COVID?
I definitely think there's no looking back here. In the way that people have responded. In fact, there were some surveys that talked about the fact that the digital transformation pendulum has swung
Yes.
to the right now, and everyone are essentially investing more. I think there is no other way of survival today. I think it is the new normal. So I have seen organizations accelerate this. If you were to look at it, a simplified version of that is to see how you can incorporate the digital fundamentals into your product, services, and solutions. And I think everyone wants to create an app today. That is part of your digital transformation. Everyone wants to understand the data that is there. That's part of digital transformation.
Yes.
Everyone wants to optimize their resources. That's part of digital transformation. So it's here to stay. The better is to kind of invest strongly in that area. The digitally determined is what the world calls for today. You need to go invest. Don't look at cost saving activities when you have to be digitally determined. I think you'll have to invest there and see your results come through.
Sure. Seeing the clock ticking by, we are taking one quickly last question. So we are seeing that digital factories are coming up, and this will require a lot of reskilling and upskilling in the organizations and factories. So what do you suggest? How do organizations start this process of reskilling? What could be the starting point here?
See, I can speak from a technology perspective, but technology is just part of it. The favorite PPT is people, process, and technology for me. So there is a lot of things that needs to happen from a people footprint, but technology is enabling. If you're talking of the reskilling aspects today, whether it is things like AR, VR, where you have tools to kind of have online training of how to handle, say, heavy machinery today or repair of machinery, that's where technology comes in terms of reskilling, right? But reskilling is a charter in many organizations today in the transformatory journey, and it is part of the KPI as well for the top executives there. Because AI, for instance, needs for a lot of reskilling. It could be things like how do you operate with a machine, how do you coexist with a machine, right? How do you use the insights there and take the right action? All of this needs a little bit of reskilling, and I'm sure that needs to be top of agenda for many organizations. Without which, the benefit of using this, the technology doesn't augur well. So I think it is a charter. People have to think of technology as just being one of the elements. The processes and people are foundational, while technology just assists.
Sure. Though I said that was the last question, I think we should take this one question. So one of our attendees asked you, does HPE support with the mechanical side of things? He says, we have an assembly line. We have developed a deep learning algorithm to identify defective pieces. So now the good and the defective parts need to be sorted into the right bins. So his question is, can HPE support with building the mechanical contraception to support this?
Unfortunately, no on the mechanical front. We are more as an IT vendor, but in terms of perhaps looking at that as one of the POCs that you have done. But if you're trying to looking at scaling that and understanding the logic that goes into that, the AI part that is there, and if you want to scale that to other parts, we have a process of engagement there where we come and understand what is the current way of doing things. How can we scale that? So that could be possible, but definitely not the mechanical piece, unfortunately. Sorry about that.
Sure, no worries. Thank you so much, sir, for all those questions and such an insightful presentation there. I must say it was a pleasure speaking with you. I am equally grateful for all the attendees for being with us here today. Have a nice day and stay